Chapter 3, Conclusion. His screams were answered by a thunderous roar as the huge black she-bear crashed through the bushes and rushed to the cub. She swiped at the clinging cat with a tremendous paw, but the cat was too quick for her, and with a hiss of fury leaped to the ground and disappeared behind a tree. The unfortunate cub's head received the full force of the blow, and he was sent spinning across the track into the bushes. In a blind, frustrated rage, maddened by the cries of her cub, the mother turned for something on which to vent her fury, and saw the still figure of the old dog. Even as she lumbered snarling towards him, the cat distracted her attention with a sudden leap to the side of the track. The bear halted, then reared up to full height for attack, red eyes glinting savagely, neck upstretched and head weaving from side to side in a menacing, snake-like way. The cat uttered another banshee scream and stepped forward with a stiff-legged sideways movement, his squinting, terrible eyes fixed on his enormous adversary. Something like fear or indecision crept into the bear's eyes as the cat advanced. She shuffled back a step with lowered head. Slow, deliberate, purposeful, the cat came on. Again, the bear retreated, bewildered by the tactics of this terrible small animal. Distraught by her cub's whimpering, slowly falling back before the relentless inch-by-inch advance. Now the cat stopped and crouched low, lashing his tail from side to side. The bear stopped too, shifting her weight uneasily before the spring that must follow, longing to decamp, but afraid to turn her back. A sudden crackle of undergrowth turned the huge animal into a statue, rigid with apprehension, and when a great dog sprang out of the bush and stood beside the cat, teeth bared and snarling, every hair on his russet back and ruff erect, she dropped to all fours, turned swiftly and fled towards her cub. There was a last growl of desperate bravado from the bush and a whimpering cry. Then the sounds of the bear's escape receded in the distance. Finally, all was quiet again. The curious squirrel leaped from his ringside seat and scrambled farther down the trunk of the tree. The cat shrank back to his normal size. His eyes regained their usual cool, detached look. He shook each paw distastefully in turn, glanced briefly at the limp, muddied bundle by his feet, blood oozing from 4 deep, parallel gashes on his shoulder, then turned and sauntered slowly down the track toward his partridge. The young dog nosed his friend all over, his lips wrinkling at the rank bear smell, then attempted to stanch the wounds with his rough tongue. He scratched fresh leaves over the blood-stained ones, then barked by the old dog's head, but there was no response, and at last he lay down panting on the grass. His eyes were uneasy and watchful. The hairs still stood upright in a ridge on his back, and from time to time he whined in perplexity. He watched the cat drag a large gray bird almost up to the nose of the unconscious dog, then slowly and deliberately begin to tear at the bird's flesh. He growled softly, but the cat ignored him and continued his tearing and eating. Presently, the enticing smell of raw, warm meat filtered through into the old dog's senses. He opened one eye and gave an appreciative sniff. The effect was galvanizing. His muddied, half-chewed tail stirred and he raised his shoulders, then his forelegs with a compulsive effort, like an old workhorse getting up after a fall. He was a pitiful sight. The half of his body that had lain in the rut was black and soaking, while the other was streaked and stained with blood. He looked like some grotesque harlequin. He trembled violently and uncontrollably throughout the length of his body, but in the sunken depths of the slanted black currant eyes there was a faint gleam of interest, which increased as he pushed his nose into the still warm bundle of soft gray feathers. This time there was no growling rebuff over the prey. Instead, the cat sat down a few yards away, suddenly aloof and indifferent, then painstakingly washed down the length of his tail. When the end twitched, he pinned it down with a paw. The old dog ate, crunching the bones ravenously with his blunt teeth. Even as his companions watched him, a miraculous strength slowly seeped back into his body. He dozed for a while, a feather hanging from his mouth, then woke again to finish the last morsel. By nightfall, he was able to walk over to the soft grass at the side of the track, where he lay down and blinked happily at his companions, wagging his pitiful tail. The Labrador lay down beside him and licked the wounded shoulder. An hour or two later, the purring cat joined them, carelessly dropping another succulent morsel by his old friend's nose. This was a deer mouse, a little creature with big eyes and long hind legs, like a miniature kangaroo. It was swallowed with a satisfying gulp, and soon the old dog slept. But the cat, purring against his chest, and the young dog curled up at his back, were wakeful and alert most of the remaining night. Neither moved from his side.